InnerQuest explores various pathways through which you can connect with the infinite wisdom of the universe and apply it to personal, professional, and spiritual growth. This program, featuring accomplished practitioners, educators, and authors, is provided by Infinity Foundation, an innovative center for holistic studies and research. We invite you to share this journey with us.
Hello, welcome to InnerQuest. My name is Jay Stone, your host for today, and our guest is Sarah Karnes. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you.
Well, tell the audience a little bit about you. Sarah is a life coach and creator of Your Body is Your Friend series. She coaches people to find their voice so they can change the world. It's kind of like change the world one person at a time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Please explain your vision of the world and how that helps you help your clients find their voice.
My vision is that all of us can let go of all the constructs we think we're supposed to be living into. Mm-hmm. We all have some great ideals, yet so often in our culture there are all of these things. You better be this way, don't be too far left, don't be too far right. All of these things we do to try to be socially acceptable. Mm-hmm. In our different constructs. And what happens is we really lose sense of what's really there, what really lights you up, mm-hmm. while still being a compassionate citizen and playing well with your neighbors.
Okay. So I understood what you said, but what is your vision of the world? That we should become individuals?
We need to become more empowered in being ourselves, and in doing that, we really need to honor what it is that lights us up. And we all have a different way of doing that, mm-hmm. and we also need to become more self-aware.
Okay.
If we're not aware of ourselves, we're way too busy people pleasing everyone else.
And what do you recommend for your clients or workshop participants to become more self-aware?
Breathing is number one. It's first, last, and everything else when it comes to how we live our lives. Mm. And it's where we can discover, there's a little bit of stress on that, or, now I really feel it. Mm-hmm. And I feel like I can really step up in a new way.
Okay. And do you recommend to your clients, do conscious breathing 10 minutes a day? It's be kind of like a meditation.
It is very much like a meditation. It's one form.
Even yogic, where you become mind, body, spirit become one.
Yeah,
process of breathing.
Each person's a little bit unique, yet to just stop and listen to one's breathing for 2 minutes, 10 minutes is even better. But if 2 minutes is what works for some people, start there.
Okay. Now, must a person be the change he or she wishes to see in the world?
It's a part of my vision. And again, without saying we have to be absolutely everything we aspire to be, because we're human and we're working our way there, the more that we step up for those things that we really care about, even if it's imperfectly or not in a huge way, mm-hmm. we really do make an effect.
And so could you give an example maybe from your life or one of your clients or workshop participants' life in which he or she, was the change that they wish to see in the world?
There are a few. I will give you mine. I was deeply shy, and everyone around me would acknowledge that. And when my daughter had some major health issues, this was pre-internet, so I didn't have a way to Google and find more information. Mm-hmm. And my doctor was very caring, but what we were looking at wasn't giving us any better results. I got really clear that I needed to step up and get out of my shy zone. And it was the mother bear in me, mm-hmm. who started talking to a lot of people, interviewing doctors, chiropractors, health practitioners who were around at the time. And through that, I found out that, well, A, what was going on health-wise, and B, I really did have a mother bear inside of me.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever that is for anybody, when you wake that mother bear or that courageous being up, there's a whole nother level of impact we can offer to the world.
So you experienced lasting change when you became that mother bear.
Yeah.
So now your client, you're like a mother bear for your clients, the workshop participants in a way.
In some ways. I have to be careful not to care more than they care, of course, if they're working in their own transformation.
Okay, so what are your responsibilities or your clients' responsibilities for being the change you or your clients want to see?
The first thing is to tell the truth with ourselves. You know, if I am fumbling like crazy, I need to acknowledge that.
Mm-hmm.
This is what I want, this is where I feel like I haven't met the mark, or this is where I've been scrambling like crazy and felt like I only got partial results. Whatever it is, and again, the change, recognize what is the change you care about. Because if we don't name that, then we kind of want to be all perfect and have a perfect world around us, but we haven't named it.
Well, what if somebody says, well, I would love to see peace between the Israelis and the Palestinians?
That's one of mine in my ideal world.
Yeah. So,
And,
I mean,
yeah.
here we are in Illinois and thousands of miles away from Israel, and
Yes.
you know, how do we manifest that?
So that's a great one. That's one of the examples for sure that I tune into. What's going on in terms of my dialogue with myself? Am I speaking to parts of myself? If my elbow hurts, am I berating it? Because that's not going to help it.
Yeah.
If indeed I've got judgment or anger about my neighbor, it doesn't mean I want to hang out with them all day long, but I can't keep harboring that. It ends up creating a lot of disharmony inside.
Well, and I also think it causes, if a person holds on to anger or judgments, it just impedes personal growth and development, just stops the evolution of a human being or maturation.
Yes, very
Yeah.
much.
Yeah. Okay, so describe your ideal client.
My ideal client has something that's been out there, kind of like that dream, that vision, or someday I want to. I mean, for some people, it's just about starting to look at the bucket list. Because underneath, even if it's visiting the Grand Canyon, underneath it there's something for them that has more meaning. Often it's, for instance, using that example, and I have somebody where that came up, it's about really immersing in more beauty. And what she realized was she wanted to create more beauty not only in her environment, her home, her garden, she really wanted to create more of that in a really sterile work environment. And without having to redecorate the whole office, she just started doing simple, subtle touches.
Like bringing a plant or,
Yeah.
or a waterfall or fountain. Yeah.
And it started to make a world of difference. And she now actually works with feng shui. So it unfolded to become something, and she also did go to the Grand Canyon because that was important to her.
And so, well, what are the qualities of an ideal client?
There's a level of commitment and longing. I think we all long to be, more in integrity, more joyful, more kind, all of those things. Yet when we get more specific to the longing, then there's a clarity of commitment. This is important to me. I am not willing to let that go. And often it's people in midlife. They've done enough kind of coasting on the surface, and they've said, you know what? There's more to my life, and I really want to leave more of an impact.
Okay. It reminds me of, I interviewed Dr. Bernie Siegel, the surgeon who wrote best-selling
Yes.
books, Love, Medicine, and Miracles, even got to meditate half-hour with him.
That's great.
But he talks about extraordinary cancer patients.
Mm-hmm.
And what I was hearing from you is that there's something inside of your clients that makes them ideal. You know, that they're moving from within, or as you say, finding their voice.
Yeah, and there's a willingness to change, of course.
Yes.
And depending on where somebody's at, that can vary. There's a willingness, but not a lot of energy. So that's where we'll start, is how can you reclaim the energy?
Now, what are some of the reasons people come to see you?
Often there's a major transition going on in their life. Their kids are leaving the nest. They've shifted a relationship, or they're entering into a new relationship, realizing it's not okay to create some of the old patterns that used to play out.
Mm-hmm.
And definitely where they're reinventing themselves career-wise or identity-wise, because ultimately we're constantly being transformed.
Okay. And do you work with, let's say, someone looking for a mate?
I do.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing there is, can we look at the relationship internally?
Yeah.
How do you relate with yourself?
Mm-hmm.
Let's start with that instead of immediately grabbing onto somebody who's right there.
Okay.
Let's really
and
cultivate.
so how do you work with someone internally, you know, to...
Internally, we'll look at what have their behavior patterns been in relationship. You know, we can start externally, but there will be mirrors internally.
Mm-hmm.
And one would be the example of feeling like, well, I can speak up to a certain point, but I can't really say stop. Mm-hmm. Or I can't really say, I want to do this. And if somebody doesn't feel that permission to speak it and have the conversation, ultimately they're going to play that pattern out again. And to recognize with myself, if there's something I haven't given voice to or a feeling I haven't acknowledged, it's going to be really hard in relationship with others.
Okay. And then do you actually ever work with couples?
Occasionally. I'll usually work with them individually first before I work with them together.
Mm-hmm.
Because ultimately we all have our own perceptions.
Mm-hmm.
So the more that somebody can work individually on some of their rough edges as well as their longings, then what they bring to the table when we come together, all three of us, is very different.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Explain what you mean when you say you help people claim their voice.
I am not a voice coach formally, nor am I trained in voice training the way my friend who's a mezzo-soprano is. What I will say is we all have things we want to express and stand for in the world. And way too many people sit on it. They don't say it, they don't raise their hand at a meeting, they don't pull their friend aside and they say, excuse me.
And why aren't people speaking up for themselves? Why aren't they expressing their own true voice or inner voice?
A lot of people grew up in households with some version of children are seen and not heard.
Mm-hmm.
And are still learning, or they got really loud and boisterous, kind of became the class clown. Mm-hmm. Yet people don't take them very seriously because they're so busy hamming it up all the time. And a lot of people don't quite grow out of those patterns. Somewhat they do.
Yeah.
But not really where it matters.
Okay. Now, you're the creator of Your Body as Your Friend series.
Mm-hmm.
What is that series?
Well, speaking of transformation, as my body started to really go into some major transformation and my hormones started to go topsy-turvy, and I was talking with a number of clients who were having some similar things, this came about in terms of let's really have this conversation. If indeed your joints are creakier than ever, or your brain's not remembering things the way it used to, or you're just not happy with your digestive system and how it's working or not working, how can we stop and really lovingly and curiously look at what's going on. So taking the judgment off, just as we need to with our neighbor. And when we take our judgment off of it, then we can lovingly look at what's going on. I've seen many people release major tension, and for those where it's a more chronic or in-depth situation, what I've seen them do is become kinder with themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And that's huge. In fact, I had several people one night in a group say, I feel like I just gave myself the TLC that I don't think I've had most of my life.
And I assume they experienced some sort of shift?
They did. We work with breathing because it's a biggie for me, and it's a biggie for all of us. So we work with some different
No breath,
practices.
no life.
Yeah. So we work with some different breathing practices. We work with often a creative process of some kind. Get the crayons out and let go of our, figuring it out self.
Now, you mentioned a group. Do you also work with groups?
I do. Your Body is Your Friend is a group that I offer at Inner Balance on the third or fourth Thursday of the month.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also work with groups with a life mission exploration.
Okay.
And that, again, touches in on the breath, but it's tuning into our inner wisdom in terms of what are those things that light you up.
How long do your group sessions go?
The group sessions are usually an hour and a half to 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll start with some inner reflection, meditation, just quieting, centering. Then we'll go into getting curious internally and externally with our neighbors, or even doing a group insight process.
Mm-hmm.
And then we will usually complete with some form of action, inspiration, clarity that people can say, this is what I'm working with. Can I get a hand here? Who would be on board with me?
Okay, and what are the age ranges? Do you ever have children in these groups?
We do. Anywhere over 7 or 8.
Really, that young?
We can really have some great conversations. In fact, when we get kids in the life mission exploration, or Your Body is Your Friend, both, but they haven't put on so many filters.
Mm-hmm.
As we grow up, we start to put on more filters. We start to tell less of the truth in the name of being socially acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
And the kids just bring it forth, and they don't mince words.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I was thinking about this, Your Body is Your Friend. I was thinking like you'd have some dialogue with your body. Do you ever do that?
We do, actually. And one of the ways we'll do it is to play with posture.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, just, a simple, play with finding your string, your relatively tall backbone.
Mm-hmm.
And think about a challenging situation.
I don't want to think about a challenging situation.
Of course.
Yeah.
And go back to slumping.
Yeah.
And think about the challenging situation. And I guarantee you, even my breathing, of course, is challenged in that.
Yeah.
And the other thing I can guarantee you, and we'll play with different practices of listening to this, is that your energy to stand up and say, this is a challenge, and I'm still going to stand up and do what I need to do here.
Yeah.
Instead of try to avoid it or dance around it or just play powerless to it.
And, I was going to ask, where'd you get up your body as your friend, which I love. I love the concept. You already told me that it came from your personal experience.
Yeah, and a number of clients who realized they were really not happy with their bodies, from body image to body function, or the joints, or, how it all works or seemingly is not working.
Well, one complaint I hear a lot is I don't have the time to take care of my body. And if a workshop participant or a member of your group or a client says that, how do you help them work through that? I don't have the time.
That's a very common one. That's actually...
And that's like saying, it's like you don't have time for your friend. You know, your best friend calls, it's like you drop what you're doing and you take the call.
Bingo.
Yeah.
So you just named it. There's that. There's also, what are the habits? And the good news is some of these habits of not giving TLC to ourselves, they're habits we've developed, and the good news is we can change a habit. We're not stuck in that pattern forever. So it's about really being alert to your priorities. Maybe you start with 5 minutes of just stopping to breathe.
Yeah. Now, what about the lessons we learn from our parents? Because experts say that we learn most through modeling. You know, like my parents, they smoked cigarettes and they never exercised, and yet I exercise and didn't smoke.
Yes. Well, two things I see there. One is there is usually that tendency as parents to say, I'm not going to do what my parents did.
Yeah.
You know, there were certain things that just are not okay. I will never, ever do that. The challenge of that is that we sometimes go to the other end of the pendulum.
Yeah.
And we give our kids, so much freedom because the boundaries were too tight. But when it comes to the modeling of, for instance, smoking or drinking or not exercising, it's about what works for you.
Yeah.
How do you feel when you do exercise?
Yeah.
And I have a friend who loves to walk and fell out of the habit this winter, and she's still finding her way back to walking on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Yet she can do it lovingly, and she can say, all right, today it's a 5-minute walk, and I'm going to celebrate it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to denigrate it.
Well, I was thinking more in terms of like my parents' generation. You know, health clubs weren't so popular.
yeah.
And it's like you got all these health clubs and yoga studios, you know, popping up, and so there is more focus on the physical body, but not in the way that you're trying to express. You know, I think you're trying to say, you know, to really get in touch with yourself, not just to look good, because that's what you're supposed to do as a member of society.
I think you just named something really important there, all the supposed tos.
Yeah.
Because yes, there is the ideal that I would like to be relatively fit and healthy, and we can look at many studies that say this means you'll be fit and healthy and have longevity. Yet, when I look at people's overall happiness, well-being, it's about acknowledging all those layers. It's about saying sometimes yoga feels like a real struggle.
Yeah.
And I do it anyway. And sometimes I just don't get there.
Well, you know, I was at one of my best friends' wedding for her daughter, and they sat me next to a University of Chicago longevity specialist. You know, because I figured, we'll have a lot in common. You know, I talk about natural foods and growing foods and meditation and yoga, and it's like, well, you're not going to live that much longer. You know, it's only going to be, you know, you're not going to live as. And I said, I don't do it because I'm going to live longer. I do it because it makes me feel good now or today.
That's a big part of it. How can we really, especially where somebody's working with a longer term goal, you know, around releasing weight or, you know, something that requires some longer recovery time.
Yeah. To enjoy it, to find an exercise or find the foods and portions that a person enjoys. What you said, you know, how do you feel when you do it?
Yeah, listen. If you eat certain things and you don't feel so good, stop and pay attention.
This question you may have asked, was there a specific moment in your life that you chose to claim your voice? Was that the Mama Bear story?
That's one of them.
Okay.
There have been others, and definitely I have spoken up in relationships where I kind of thought, oh, they'll never hear me. For a friend with some major challenges, and I said, listen, I can't speak for you, but I need to speak to you. Because I see you sitting here silently, and my sense of it is you're suffering with this in a big way, and you haven't told your partner, you haven't expressed the need. it looks like it's not really helping you to sit on your voice.
Mm-hmm.
Is that true?
Now, is there ever a time where we should withhold our voice consciously?
Yes, there certainly is that. And I think there's no absolutes. Even if you say this is the situation and should I speak or should I not, ultimately we all have our own inner knowing. And we have to stop and listen. If it would be hurtful to somebody else, my tendency is to say, better off not to say it.
Okay. All right. What are some of the more common obstacles people have to achieving their goals?
Obstacles, I think the biggest would be not believing, self-doubt, and fear.
And do you think we create our own obstacles?
Yes.
And do you think there's a purpose behind that? Or is that just natural?
I think inherently we've all come in with some interesting baggage.
Mm-hmm.
Part of it being, old conventions, old cultural norms that we're learning how to break through because they just don't fit us anymore. The other thing I think we all care a lot about is how we're perceived. So that fear of being seen or being known or being heard is often an ego concern. The doubt is a little more, all right, whether or not this project succeeds, am I willing to give it my all, despite the odds, despite the kind people who want to say, you can't do that. Are you crazy? All of that?
Where does the role of faith come in? Like, faith in God or higher power, or belief in a specific religion?
I look at it as faith in yourself and faith in whatever your God ideal or the universe is, because everyone has such different interpretations of that. And for a lot of people, if they grew up in a fairly tight religious culture, they tend to have some major wounds around that.
Okay.
And that's a part of where the doubt comes in. I'm not good enough because I don't live up to all of the rules of this religion. And the not good enough needs to go.
All right.
But we're all working that one.
We're running out of time, so going to have to wrap it up here.
Okay.
For more information about Infinity Foundation, Inner Quest Talk Show, Sarah Karnes, stay tuned to the credits at the end. Until next time, wish you good health, good spirits, good fortune. It's been a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you, Jake.
Thank you.
For more